Mike Benz opens the conversation by laying out a foundational truth that the CIA, particularly throughout the Cold War in the 1940s, devoted a staggering portion, about one-third, of its budget to media manipulation. This effort was designed explicitly to control narratives globally, ensuring that populations did not think independently but instead aligned with U.S. geopolitical interests. The media landscape, once dominated by a few powerful outlets, functioned almost like a puppet theater directed by intelligence agencies. Benz traces the roots of this system to World War II, where relief agencies and philanthropic organizations, often seen as benign, were co-opted by intelligence to funnel money, weapons, and propaganda behind the Iron Curtain and into contentious regions such as South and Central America. This strategic use of ostensibly neutral NGOs, or NOSs as he calls them, created plausible deniability because attacking these charitable organizations would provoke a global outcry. Such framing allowed covert operations to flourish under the cover of humanitarian aid, setting the tone for how media and influence campaigns have been conducted since. A significant portion of the conversation revolves around NOSs, which Benz describes as the stem cell of the influence world. These organizations are mutable, able to serve as grassroots movements or as fronts for intelligence and statecraft operations. Their origins tie back to early 20th century tax code changes, offering a perfect cover as philanthropic, charitable, or humanitarian entities while serving tactical interests. During the Cold War, NOSs became effective levers for influence, funneling resources and ideological narratives worldwide. Benz emphasizes that the strategic advantage of these organizations lies in their perceived benevolence, making government crackdowns risky and therefore less likely. The good name masks nefarious activities, a pattern that has been replicated across decades and geographical theaters. Benz debunks the notion that media influence is a new phenomenon. From the Spanish-American War, where yellow journalism helped manufacture public consent for empire building, to the centralized propaganda machine of World War II, the elite have long controlled narratives through media monopolies. The handful of TV and radio networks post-war, many directly linked to government offices like the Office of War Information, served as gatekeepers of public opinion. This elite dominance continued well into the Cold War, with explicit CIA operations such as Project Mockingbird, which infiltrated newsrooms worldwide. He notes that supposedly independent media entities around the globe frequently operate on U.S. government payrolls or under their influence, blurring the lines between independent press and state propaganda. The digitization of media has added complexity, but has not fundamentally overturned this dynamic. With the military conflicts of mass casualty warfare growing unpopular and untenable, Benz highlights the strategic shift towards soft power. Instead of tanks and bombs, modern influence is waged through information, culture, and electoral manipulation, targeting hearts and minds within democratic frameworks. The U.S. foreign policy apparatus, consisting not just of the State Department, but agencies like USAID, the World Bank, the IMF, and others, uses diplomatic and financial pressure to influence domestic politics worldwide. Such influence often hinges on stipulations tied to international loans or aid, requiring free media, and reforms that align countries' political and economic interests with U.S. strategic goals. This orchestration of democratic consent is, in many cases, a facade for securing resource exploitation, military footholds, and economic dominion. One of the more eye-opening revelations Benz offers is the transactional nature of modern foreign policy, where economic interests drive political moves under the guise of ideology or philanthropy. Taking George Soros's Open Society Foundation as a key example, Benz argues that hedge funds back both government agencies and civil society organizations to push agendas that maximize profits while shaping political outcomes. This donor-drafter class, as Benz terms it, exploits government policy to generate favorable conditions for their investments. He details how protest movements, political upheavals, and diplomatic pressure are often engineered and funded by entities that simultaneously profit from these transformations. The result is a self-reinforcing system where ideological battles are proxies for financial and geopolitical gain. Benz contextualizes U.S.-funded NGOs and democracy promotion entities as integral components of covert statecraft despite their public-facing missions. Organizations such as the National Endowment for Democracy, created during Reagan's presidency, are direct continuations or successors of CIA influence operations, but with layers of obfuscation. These groups serve as plausible deniability, mechanisms to fund political actors and movements overseas in ways that would be politically toxic if openly linked to the U.S. government. Moreover, these NGOs engage in media, union, and cultural work designed to shape not just policy, but societal norms and electoral terrains. This extensive network effectively weaponizes civil society, turning it into a tool of foreign policy without clear accountability. The podcast reveals an academic and military-industrial complex baked into universities worldwide that study and teach how to instigate regime changes through non-kinetic means. Gene Sharp, funded handsomely by the U.S. Department of War, pioneered methods based on civil resistance and bottom-up revolutions, supplanting traditional military coups. These strategies involve identifying and leveraging key societal groups, employing grassroots activism designed to fracture political legitimacy and coerce elites politically. Techniques such as social media mobilization, propaganda dissemination, sponsored protests, and manufactured crises are all part of a sophisticated toolkit. This knowledge has institutional backing, including training programs, manuals, and simulation exercises, e.g., the Transition Integrity Project, underscoring how systematic and strategic such interventions have become. Perhaps the most current and urgent topic is the rise of AI-driven censorship as a tool to manage narratives on social media, exposed vividly through Benz's explanation of how Elon Musk's acquisition of X disrupted institutional control. The weapons of mass deletion, AI-powered techniques using natural language processing to swiftly identify and remove disfavored content, became central to maintaining the narrative monopoly. Elon's curtailment of data scraping debilitated these AI systems' abilities to monitor and react in real time, unleashing a surge of previously suppressed voices and narratives. Benz connects this technological shift to the acceleration of social movements worldwide and growing difficulty for authorities to impose uniform control. The digital realm has become a central battlefield where states and corporate actors wield tremendous power, but this control has proved more fragile than expected. Benz highlights how the tools of soft power and media manipulation are now used not just internationally, but domestically, with political censorship and influence campaigns affecting elections and social discourse within the U.S. and allied nations. Whether suppressing Bernie Sanders supporters or targeting right-wing personalities like Charlie Kirk, manipulation and censorship transcend party lines, dictated instead by allegiance to the blob, the entrenched foreign policy and national security establishment. The dual pressures of left and right-wing ideologies being pushed to extremes are seen as byproducts of this framework, engineered to create necessary societal fractures that then justify tighter control. Protest movements, cultural wars, and even violent political incidents are, in Benz's telling, often amplified or exploited elements of broader covert operations designed to destabilize or redirect political momentum in service of elite interests. At the heart of this scan lies the blob, a bipartisan network more powerful than elected officials, rooted in Washington's foreign policy establishment. Benz explains the movement of key figures between government, intelligence, and corporate spheres, exemplified by individuals like Tom Donilon, the former national security advisor turned head of BlackRock's Investment Institute. This revolving door enables a seamless feedback loop where military-industrial interests align with financial capital to maximize profits. These connections have a concrete impact on policy decisions, such as the U.S. intervention and sanctions regarding Ukraine that benefit major energy corporations. This insider trading on the global stage represents a consolidation of power and wealth under the pretense of democracy and national security. The alliance between money, power, and foreign policy goals is portrayed as the primary driver of international conflict and internal political machinations. Benz dives into how cultural institutions, music, arts, education, and identity politics are deliberately co-opted to foment unrest, radicalization, and ideological alignment with specific geopolitical goals. Funding of transgender dance festivals in Bangladesh and rap movements elsewhere exemplify the use of culture as a front to fracture societies and mobilize disaffected groups. He gives examples of how music diplomacy has become a tool of foreign policy, with repertoires explicitly crafted to promote protest and dissent under the banner of human rights or freedom of expression. This cultural warfare extends to banning languages, rewriting education curriculums, and reshaping national identities to undercut rival ideologies, keeping populations malleable and aligned with U.S. interests. Closing with policy considerations, Benz stresses that while covert operations may remain a necessity in geopolitics, transparency and oversight are critical to reining in abuses and ensuring democratic accountability. Citing the opaque nature of USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy's operations, he argues that their secrecy far exceeds even that of the CIA, with little meaningful congressional oversight. Historical reforms curtailed some CIA excesses in the 1970s, but no equivalent process has occurred for USAID or the wider influence apparatus. Benz calls for a reckoning and institutional restructuring, balancing the realities of power with the imperative to limit corruption and protect civil liberties. Illuminating these hidden mechanisms, he suggests, is the first step toward fostering a more accountable and sustainable foreign policy.